It began as an ordinary night, but by morning, the whole country would be talking about him. And within 24 hours, he would stand inside the White House, receiving an invitation that would change his life forever. But first, he had to survive. He got stabbed when he defended a veteran. 24 hours later, he received shocking presidential invite. Before we go further, please ensure to like, share, and subscribe for more interesting stories like this one. Ethan Cole hunched in his subway seat, eyelids heavy with exhaustion. The late-night train clattered through the tunnels beneath New York City, its flickering lights casting eerie shadows across the empty car. He'd worked a double shift again. Graphic design wasn't supposed to be this draining, but endless revisions for an ungrateful client had kept him late. All he wanted was a shower and a warm bed. As the train rocked gently, his gaze drifted across the aisle and caught on a figure that seemed oddly out of place amid the grime and graffiti. An elderly woman sat straight-backed, her silver hair neatly pinned beneath a navy blue beret. Her coat was worn but clean. Resting in her lap was a faded military backpack, its fabric threadbare, its patches and medals gleaming softly under the fluorescent lights. One of those medals, a bronze star, glinted with particular pride. Ethan didn't know her name yet, but something about her stirred a quiet respect within him. She looked dignified, alone, but unafraid. The next station loomed. The brakes screeched. The doors hissed open. Two men stumbled into the car. Big, broad-shouldered, jackets hanging loose over thick torsos. Drunk, you could smell it. They laughed too loudly as they swaggered in, their voices echoing through the near-empty train. "Would you look at this?" The first man jeered, slapping his buddy's arm. His bloodshot eyes locked onto the elderly woman. The second man sneered. "What's with all the shiny pins, Grandma? You think you're some kind of hero?" Maria Owens, though Ethan didn't yet know her name, met their gaze calmly. She said nothing, her grip tightening on the straps of her backpack. The taller man leaned closer, grinning nastily. "Bet you thought you were tough once, huh? Let's see what you got here." His hand shot out, fingers curling around the pack strap. Maria jerked away, her face hardening. That's when Ethan felt it, a spark, deep in his gut. Anger. He was tired, bone-weary. But this he could not ignore. He rose, his voice sharper than he expected. "Leave her alone." Both men turned slowly, as though surprised that anyone would dare interfere. The taller one narrowed his eyes. "Say again." Ethan's heart hammered, but he didn't back down. "She served this country. Show some respect." The drunk's face twisted into a snarl. He shoved Ethan hard. "You got a death wish, buddy?" Ethan barely kept his footing. He glanced at Maria, her eyes wide now, her breath quickening. The second man stepped forward. Without warning, he swung. Ethan ducked instinctively, fist rising. He wasn't a fighter, not really, but adrenaline flooded his veins. He shoved the man back, placing himself fully between Maria and her attackers. That's when it happened. A flash of silver. Cold steel sliced through Ethan's side. The pain was instant, electric, a fire spreading through his ribs. He gasped, staggering. Warm blood seeped between his fingers as he clutched the wound. But still, he didn't fall. "Go," he rasped to Maria. She didn't run. Instead, she grabbed his shoulder, pulling him partially behind her as the train shuddered to a stop. Red lights pulsed outside. Sirens. The taller man cursed. "Cops. Let's move." The two attackers bolted, shoving past Ethan and Maria as NYPD officers stormed the car. Ethan's legs buckled. Maria caught him, lowering him gently to the floor. "Stay with me," she cried, her voice raw with urgency. Ethan blinked, vision swimming. His pulse slowed, the edges of the world fading. The last thing he saw was Maria's weathered hand pressed firmly over his bleeding side. And then darkness. But this was not the end. It was only the beginning. A faint beeping pierced the silence. Steady, unyielding, like a distant metronome pulling him back from the edge. Ethan stirred. The weight in his limbs was unbearable, as though gravity itself had grown tenfold. His eyes fluttered open, squinting against harsh fluorescent lights. Where was he? A sterile ceiling. For tubes taped to his arm. The antiseptic smell of alcohol and latex filled his nose. A hospital. Slowly, painfully, he turned his head. And there, sitting beside his bed, was the elderly woman, Maria Owens. Her uniform jacket was neatly folded on the chair beside her. Her posture remained proud, but her face was a portrait of exhaustion and relief. Tears glistened in her eyes. "You're awake?" she whispered, voice trembling. Ethan's mouth felt like sandpaper. His throat burned. But somehow, words formed. "Are you okay?" Maria's smile was soft, but her voice held steel. "Because of you, I am." She reached out and grasped his hand, firm, unwavering. "You saved my life," she said. A nurse entered, relief flooding her face at the sight of Ethan awake. "Mr. Cole," she said brightly, "you've had quite the night. And quite the story." Ethan blinked, confused. "What happened?" The nurse chuckled. "You're a hero. Half the country's calling you that already." She explained. The entire altercation had been captured by the subway's security cameras. Within hours, the footage had gone viral. Millions had already seen Ethan standing between Maria and her attackers, bleeding, but unyielding. Outside the hospital, reporters had gathered. Messages and gifts had poured in from across the nation. Ethan's heart raced. This wasn't what he wanted. He hadn't done it for attention. Maria must have sensed his turmoil. She squeezed his hand gently. "I know this is overwhelming," she said softly, "but I need you to understand something." She leaned closer, her gaze steady. "I served 2 tours in Iraq," she began. "I fought for my country. I lost friends, good men and women. I watched them come home broken. And I came home to a nation that barely noticed." Her voice caught. She swallowed hard. "Do you know what it feels like," she whispered, "to wear these medals and still be invisible?" Ethan's throat tightened. No one has ever stood up for me like that," she continued. "Not once. Not until you." He swallowed against the lump in his throat. "I just did what was right," he managed. Maria smiled. "That's why it mattered." Throughout the day, visitors came and went. Hospital staff offering congratulations, local officials requesting statements. But Ethan wanted none of it. He only wanted rest. Maria remained by his side. She refused to leave, even when urged to go home. She sat vigil, watching over him with quiet determination. As dusk fell, the room dimmed. The hum of distant voices faded. That's when the nurse returned, her expression oddly nervous. "Mr. Cole," she said hesitantly, "you have another visitor." Ethan frowned. Before he could speak, a man in a dark suit entered the room, tall, broad-shouldered, with a discreet earpiece in his ear. "Secret Service." Maria straightened instantly, her military instincts kicking in. The agent approached Ethan's bedside, his tone formal but respectful. "Mr. Cole," he began, "on behalf of the President of the United States, I am here to deliver a message." Ethan's eyes widened. The agent produced a sealed envelope bearing the presidential seal. With deliberate care, he handed it to Ethan. "Inside," he continued, "is an invitation. The president has requested your presence at the White House tomorrow." Maria gasped softly. Ethan stared at the envelope, stunned. "This isn't necessary," he stammered. The agent smiled faintly. "Sir, with all due respect, the nation disagrees." He gave a small nod and left the room. For a long moment, silence reigned. Then Maria exhaled slowly. "Well," she said with a soft chuckle, "looks like you started something bigger than you imagined." Ethan shook his head, still in disbelief. "I'm just a guy on a subway," he whispered. Maria squeezed his hand again, her voice fierce. "No, Ethan," she said. "You are so much more than that now. And tomorrow, the world is going to know it." As night fell, Ethan lay awake, heart pounding. What had he gotten himself into? One thing was certain now. The next 24 hours would be unlike anything he'd ever known. And somewhere deep inside, a quiet voice whispered, "You did the right thing. No matter what happens next, you did the right thing." The night wore on, but sleep remained a stranger. Ethan lay beneath stiff hospital sheets, his side aching with every breath. Outside his window, the city of New York glittered, indifferent, unyielding. Yet in the world beyond those lights, something had changed. His face, his story, his name. They were everywhere. #SubwayHero. It began with a single clip, grainy footage from a subway security camera. A young man standing firm, shielding an elderly veteran, blood soaking his shirt, refusing to back down. By dawn, millions had seen it. News anchors replayed the footage on an endless loop. Talk show hosts praised his courage. Celebrities tweeted their admiration. Ethan Cole had become a symbol, and the storm was only just beginning. The first wave hit just after sunrise. Reporters swarmed the hospital entrance. News vans clogged the street. Cameras pointed toward every window. Inside, nurses hurried about with forced smiles. Doctors glanced at Ethan's chart, their eyes filled with curiosity. Maria remained his constant companion, her military bearing shielding him from the worst of the chaos. "Don't let it get to you," she warned gently. "The world loves a hero story. They'll chew it up and move on." But Ethan wasn't so sure. He wasn't a hero. He was just a guy who couldn't look away. A knock sounded at the door. Reluctantly, Maria opened it. A young woman in a crisp suit stepped inside, a representative from a major news network. "Mr. Cole," she began brightly, "we'd like to schedule an interview. Live, prime time. The country needs to hear your story." Ethan shook his head weakly. "I didn't do it for attention," he murmured. The reporter smiled politely, undeterred. "But the nation sees you as a symbol of courage. Don't you want to inspire others?" Maria's eyes narrowed. "This man nearly died," she said coolly. "He's not here to perform for your ratings." The reporter faltered, then retreated. Ethan exhaled slowly. "Thank you," he whispered. Maria gave a small smile. "I may be old, but I still know how to fight." As the day progressed, gifts and letters flooded the hospital. Flowers lined the hallway. Handmade cards from children. A note from a young veteran read simply, "Thank you for standing up for one of us." Ethan read each message with growing disbelief. Why did this matter so much to people? Maria answered without prompting. "Because most people are afraid," she said softly. "They look away. They stay silent. You didn't." Her gaze grew distant. "When I came home from Iraq, there were no parades, no banners, just silence. You reminded people that we matter, that standing up for what's right still means something." Ethan swallowed hard. He hadn't thought about it that way. To him, it had been instinct. But to the world, it had become a beacon. That afternoon, another visitor arrived. The same Secret Service agent as before, his expression unreadable. "Mr. Cole," he said formally, "the president's invitation still stands. We have arranged transportation for you and Ms. Owens. You will depart tonight." Ethan blinked. "Tonight?" The agent nodded. "The president wishes to meet you tomorrow morning. Personally." Maria squeezed his arm. "It's time," she said quietly. "You're ready." As dusk approached, the hospital released him, reluctantly, under strict orders for rest. A sleek black SUV waited outside, its windows tinted. The crowd erupted in cheers as Ethan and Maria emerged. Cameras flashed. Voices shouted, "Ethan, how do you feel? What will you say to the president? Are you a hero?" Ethan kept his head down, leaning on Maria for support. "I'm not a hero," he whispered again. But deep down, part of him wondered, was it possible to be both afraid and brave at the same time? The motorcade wound through the city streets, then onto the highway. Maria sat beside him, her expression thoughtful. "You changed my life that night," she said softly. Ethan looked at her, startled. "You gave me hope again," she continued. "Not just for myself, for this country. People needed to see that goodness still exists." He didn't know what to say. Instead, he reached out and took her hand. They rode in silence, the city fading behind them. As darkness fell, the SUV pulled onto an airstrip. A government jet waited, engines humming softly. Ethan's heart pounded as he stepped aboard. Maria followed, her posture straight and proud. The flight to Washington was quiet, almost surreal. Ethan stared out the window, watching the stars blur past. "What do I say to the president?" he asked finally. Maria smiled gently. "Tell the truth," she said. That's all anyone can ask. As the plane descended over the nation's capital, Ethan felt the weight of what lay ahead. Tomorrow, he would stand before the most powerful man in the country, not as a soldier, not as a politician, but as an ordinary citizen who had made an extraordinary choice. And the whole world would be watching. His stomach twisted with nerves. But Maria's steady presence grounded him. "You're not alone," she reminded him. "You never were." As the plane touched down, Ethan took a deep breath. Whatever came next, he would face it head on. Because sometimes, the hardest battles are fought not on distant battlefields, but in the choices we make, here and now. And this choice, this moment, was his to make. The morning dawned crisp and cold over Washington, D.C. As the jet touched down under the first rays of sun, Ethan gazed out the window, nerves twisting tighter with every passing second. The moment felt surreal. Just 24 hours ago, he'd been lying in a pool of his own blood on a subway floor. Now, a motorcade awaited him on the tarmac, its sleek black cars gleaming in the pale light. Maria sat beside him, calm and composed in her military dress uniform. The creases in her jacket were razor sharp. Her medals shone proudly against her chest. "You ready?" she asked gently. Ethan exhaled slowly. "No," he admitted. "But I'm going anyway." Maria's smile was soft. "That's all courage is." The plane door opened with a hiss. Flashbulbs popped immediately. Reporters shouted questions from behind barricades. "Ethan Cole, how do you feel? Are you excited to meet the president?" Ethan kept his gaze steady, Maria's words echoing in his mind. "Tell the truth." The Secret Service whisked them into the motorcade. Sirens wailed as they sped through the city. Ethan stared out at the marble monuments flashing past. The Lincoln Memorial, the Washington Monument, symbols of a nation and of ideals worth defending. His stomach churned. Maria noticed. "Deep breaths," she advised. "This isn't about politics. It's about people." Ethan nodded, though the weight of the moment pressed heavy on his chest. At last, the gates of the White House loomed ahead. The motorcade slowed, turning into the historic grounds. Guards saluted as the cars rolled to a stop. A White House aide greeted them with a warm smile. "Mr. Cole, Ms. Owens, welcome. The president is eager to meet you." Ethan's legs felt unsteady as he climbed out. Maria offered her arm. "Lean on me if you need to," she whispered. Together, they entered the grand halls of the White House, its history palpable in every polished surface. Photographs of past leaders lined the walls. Portraits of heroes and changemakers gazed down from above. Ethan swallowed hard. They were led to a private waiting room. Moments later, another aide appeared. "The president will see you now." Ethan's heart pounded as they followed the aide through towering doors into the Oval Office. There, behind the resolute desk, stood the President of the United States, tall, composed, eyes kind but piercing. He crossed the room with an outstretched hand. "Mr. Cole," he said warmly, "it is an honor to meet you." Ethan grasped the offered hand, his own trembling slightly. "Sir, I'm honored to be here," he managed. The president smiled, then turned to Maria. "And Sergeant Owens," he said, taking her hand firmly, "thank you for your service. It's about time the nation gave you the recognition you deserve." Maria's eyes shimmered. "Thank you, Mr. President." They sat together, the president listening intently as Ethan recounted the events of that fateful night. "I didn't think," Ethan admitted. "I just knew I couldn't let them hurt her." The president nodded. "That's what makes it extraordinary," he said. "In a world where too many look the other way, you stood up. You reminded us all what courage looks like." He leaned back, his gaze thoughtful. "This nation was built on acts of ordinary bravery. Yours has touched millions. It's inspired conversations about who we are and who we want to be." Ethan's throat tightened. He hadn't done this for speeches or ceremonies. But hearing those words, knowing that maybe, just maybe, it mattered, brought a strange peace. Then the president rose. "There's something else," he said. "If you'll both join me." He led them to the East Room, now packed with reporters and dignitaries. A podium stood ready. Cameras rolled. The nation was watching. The president took the stage. "Good morning," he began. "Today we gather not to celebrate celebrity or wealth, but courage." He spoke of Ethan's selfless act, of Maria's lifetime of service, of the values that still define the American spirit. Then he motioned them forward. "Mr. Cole, Sergeant Owens, please join me." Ethan's legs shook as he approached the podium, Maria steady at his side. Before the gathered crowd, the president presented Ethan with the Presidential Citizen's Medal, one of the nation's highest civilian honors. For standing in the face of danger, the citation read, "For protecting a fellow citizen, and for reminding us all that one person can make a difference." The applause was thunderous. Then the president turned to Maria. "For your service, your sacrifice, and your unwavering spirit, today, we honor you as well." Maria received a special commendation, her medals gleaming beneath the spotlights. Tears traced silent paths down her cheeks. When it was Ethan's turn to speak, he approached the microphone, heart racing. "I'm not a hero," he began, voice trembling. "I'm just a guy who couldn't stand by and do nothing." He glanced at Maria. "But if this experience has taught me anything, it's that we all have a choice. We can look away, or we can step forward." He paused, the room holding its breath. "I chose to step forward, and I'd do it again." The applause was deafening. As the ceremony ended, the president shook their hands once more. "You've reminded this country what truly matters," he said quietly. "Thank you." Ethan and Maria left the White House that day forever changed. But the ripple effects of their story had only just begun. The motorcade carried them back through the streets of Washington, D.C., but the city felt different now. Outside the White House gates, crowds had gathered. Reporters called out questions, supporters waved flags, and strangers held signs. "Thank you, Ethan. Honor our veterans. Be the hero." Inside the car, Ethan sat in stunned silence, the presidential citizen's medal heavy around his neck. Maria rested a gentle hand on his shoulder. "You did well," she said softly. Ethan exhaled, still trying to process the whirlwind of the past 24 hours. "This wasn't supposed to happen," he murmured. "I was just heading home." Maria smiled faintly. Sometimes the smallest choices echo the loudest. The words stayed with him as the plane lifted off that evening, carrying them back to New York. But when they landed, it was clear the world had changed. The airport terminal was packed. Applause erupted as Ethan and Maria emerged, flanked by security. A boy no older than 10 darted forward, clutching a handmade sign. "My dad is a vet." "Thank you, Ethan." Ethan knelt, his throat tightening. "What's your name?" he asked gently. "Charlie," the boy whispered. "My dad says you're a real hero." Ethan hugged him tightly, blinking back tears. "No, Charlie," he said softly. "Your dad's the hero." I just stood up. But standing up, it turned out, had power. Over the next week, the story continued to dominate headlines. Ethan's phone rang constantly. Interview requests, speaking invitations, offers from publishers and film studios. But he ignored most of them. Fame had never been the goal. One invitation caught his eye, though, from a local veteran center. "We'd be honored to have you speak," the director wrote. "You've reminded the world that veterans matter." Maria encouraged him to accept. "You have a voice now," she told him. "Use it." And so he did. His first speech was shaky. His hands trembled as he faced a room of veterans. Men and women whose service far outshone his own. But as he spoke, honestly, humbly, the nerves faded. "I'm not here because I'm brave," he said. "I'm here because one night, I chose not to be silent. And because of that choice, I met all of you, true heroes." Afterward, an older veteran with a silver cane approached him. "Son," the man said gruffly, "you reminded this old soldier that there's still good in the world." "Thank you." Word spread quickly. More invitations followed. Schools, community centers, national conferences. And with each appearance, Ethan carried one message: one person can make a difference. Courage is a choice we make every day. But Ethan wanted to do more than speak. Late one night, over coffee in Maria's apartment, an idea took root. "What if we started something?" he asked. "A way to help veterans, to protect them, to remind people they matter." Maria's eyes lit up. "A nonprofit," she said. "We could call it Stand with Valor." And so they did. Within weeks, the organization was born, a grassroots movement dedicated to supporting veterans, combating homelessness, and educating citizens about standing up against injustice. Donations poured in. Volunteers signed up. The movement spread from New York to cities across the country. 1 year after that fateful night, Ethan and Maria stood side by side at a national memorial service. Beneath a clear blue sky, they honored the fallen and the living. As taps played softly, Maria turned to Ethan, her voice thick with emotion. "You didn't just save my life that night," she whispered. "You gave me back my faith in this country." Ethan's throat tightened. "And you gave me a purpose," he said quietly. "I was just a tired guy on a subway. You made me see what matters." They embraced, surrounded by rows of flags waving in the breeze. Nearby, a group of young veterans approached, men and women in crisp uniforms. "Sir," one of them said, "you've inspired a lot of us. We just wanted to say thank you." Ethan shook their hands, humbled. "I didn't do this alone," he replied, glancing at Maria. "And none of us should have to stand alone." As the sun set that evening, Ethan reflected on the journey. One moment of courage had sparked a movement. One act of standing up had changed countless lives. But perhaps the greatest lesson was this: heroism isn't reserved for soldiers or presidents. It lives in the choices we make, the voices we raise, the hands we extend. It lives in ordinary people, like Ethan Cole, who choose, in a single heartbeat, to say, "Not today, not on my watch." And that choice can echo forever. If the story moved you, then let it inspire you to take action. Courage isn't reserved for heroes on the news, it lives in each of us. Whether it's standing up for someone in need, supporting a veteran, or simply choosing kindness in a tough moment, your actions matter. Share this video to spread the message of bravery and compassion. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more powerful true stories that remind us of the difference one person can make. Together, let's build a world where no one stands alone.